So today I want to talk about some things that have already been brought up, and that's certainly about your mental health, but in this case also technology, the pros and the cons. So I think that technology, this thing that we find very revolutionary, is happening all around us, literally under our noses, but also on our wrists and in our pockets, right? Because we are living in an age where alternative means of measurement and artificial intelligence are surrounding us, and they're providing the sensors for alternative measures, and AI aren't just buzzwords, but they're really powerful tools to help us with our habits and everyday life. So what I'd like to suggest is that we think about these tools as ways to provide some decision support as we move through our everyday life. So I'm going to start with something which I think is just fundamental, and that's the notion that our habits shape our health and well-being. Right? You know this to be true. The little choices that we make every day, the food we eat, whether we move or we don't, the way we spend our time, all of these things help to come together to form our habits. And our habits help us determine the way we're going to live our lives, be it a more healthy life or perhaps a less healthy life. What's good and bad about that is that we, when we choose well, we had a speaker, JC, up here just a few minutes ago, telling us about how one might choose well, but it's hard, right? When you get into sets of habits that are perhaps not leading to those good outcomes, they're very challenging to change. But I'm here to tell you that I believe, and some of the research in my lab is leading to, ways of using technology, AI, and sensors in order to make these things easier. So imagine that you had a health coach that was with you 24/7. Imagine that that coach knew all about you, the things that you hoped to do in your life, as well as the challenges and maybe the things that you were really good at. We actually are getting close to having that reality with these tools, the kind of things that we wear and the things in our pocket. And we're not yet taking full advantage of it, but I'd like you to imagine with me that we have one of these coaches, and say that this coach noticed that when you sleep poorly, anyone here occasionally sleeps poorly? Maybe you snack a little more the next day. Right? Anyone here snack a little more after sleeping poorly? Yes. So the idea that this is a habit, that this is a pattern, is something that may or may not emerge to you, may or may not be available to you at the time where you can change it. But using tools, technology, we can make that pattern visible. And so we could notice that, I've not slept very well. I am inclined, I'm coming up upon that time where I'm very likely to have a snack. And here, my health coach in my pocket can help me by suggesting perhaps I take some relaxation activities. Maybe I even try to go to sleep early or read that really good book. So sensors are many, but we are still inclined to think of them in the way that they came out, like the sensors that count your steps, right? We're all counting our steps and trying to get to a certain number to help us be healthy. But they do so much more now. So sensors are able to contribute to this decision support in ways like measuring heart rate variability, which is an incredible tool to tell us about stress in myriad ways in our lives. And there is my phone telling me that apparently something else is going on in my life and I need to make that turn down. So we can measure heart rate variability, and that tells us a lot about our stress. We can measure blood glucose level. If you are diabetic, we can measure sleep quantity and quality. We can also measure a hormone called cortisol that is available in our sweat. Actually, that tells us a lot about stress. All of these things can be measured and wrapped in with machine learning, with artificial intelligence technology, in order to make predictions about what might happen. Sensors help make the invisible visible to you so that you can act upon them. It's making what we like to call in my lab actionable insights. So I'm going to tell you about two particular scenarios that we're studying in the lab. The first one is about diabetes. And then I'll tell you about another one that actually brings together research I was studying, but helps me think of it in a new way. Type 1 diabetes affects millions of people globally. This is the type of diabetes that you tend to be born with something that causes the islet cells in your pancreas to no longer function. It is the type that is always insulin dependent, and it's already affecting millions of people. Prediction is by 2040, 15 million people around the world impacted. Lifelong, dramatic health impacts, especially if you don't care for your disorder. Children and adolescents are particularly impacted, partly because they're diagnosed early in life, but also because of the nature of children and teens making bad decisions, often 5 times before breakfast. That can make it even harder to control the glucose the way one needs to. If we were to consider type 2 diabetes as an even larger problem, many, many more people impacted. However, using sensors and AI, we can change things. In many places, it still is the case that one needs a finger stick to do the work, the management of blood glucose that's so important in caring for diabetes. But now, with continuous glucose management, you can painlessly and continuously monitor your glucose. We can use AI to predict out what is going to likely be my state in an hour. And furthermore, and this is what we're using AI and sensors for, the worn at your wrist, as well as a continuous glucose monitor, looking at how factors like the type of food, the quality of sleep you had the night before, the amount and type of exercise that you had, and your level of stress, how all of that comes together to predict how you're going to respond to that insulin dose. And that actually makes a huge difference, not just in the lives of a diabetic and making things a little easier to manage, it makes one's life less worrisome. It provides more confidence. It also leads to greater joy. We're just able to be freer because we have this buffer available to us with the help of prediction, and again, making what was invisible now visible. There's a different epidemic that perhaps is less physical and more mental, and it comes about reclaiming our attention. Much like many of you endorse the experience of maybe snacking a little bit more after a poor night of sleep, you might have found yourself scrolling on a phone a little too much, perhaps mindlessly, perhaps without really even having a purpose. Is this really the way we want to spend our days? Is this the way we get the most joy? No, we know this, yet we have habits. We are immersed in the attention economy. The slide is telling us about data taken in 2024 from the United States adults. The average adult spends about 12 and a half hours consuming media every day. And the red line is showing the percent of total time spent consuming digital media. And you'll see that that is rising dramatically compared with traditional media like, books, those things we used to read. So we're being captured by digital media. We're being served ads. We're being, brought in. And those dopamine hits are hard to escape, making those habits harder. But yet, again, these are not the things that are bringing us joy. The distractions are the kinds of things we most likely want to escape. And again, much like the example I gave with diabetes, where we're creating an app at our lab at Northeastern University in Boston, actually by one of lovely graduate students who hails from Chennai, Sundar Rangarajan. This, too, is amenable to decision support tools that are sensor and AI enabled. We can notice patterns when we tend to get distracted. When am I stressed and I'm more vulnerable to going into the social media or the reading the news and then another story and then another story and another story. So what can we do to stop that? If you have one of these decision support tools and it notices that you're stressed, it can suggest another activity, perhaps moving towards something engaging and joyful, a game with a friend, the book that you really wanted to read, a bout of meditation, something that's going to improve your habits, that improve your well-being, and hopefully your joy. Of course, like you've heard many times, with great power comes great responsibility. And it's certainly the case that there are many ethical considerations with using both AI and sensors ubiquitously. First and foremost is data privacy and security. We need to make sure that the data stay personal to you, right? That these don't go out into the world. We also need to make sure that we remain humans in the loop, that this doesn't become a technology that sort of takes over us, that we get to lead it, right? We don't want it to become the technology in and of itself so habitual that we lose the goal of living our best lives. And then finally, we want to make sure that this is something that is broadly available and equitably available. This is, if it's only available to the few, it's not doing all of us much good. So to some, I think it's pretty clear that I believe that we have a really exciting future ahead of us if we engage these tools with sensors and AI, allowing us to make better decisions, healthier decisions on a regular basis. But we got to do it in a way that we collectively are making safe and equitable. So I leave you with this challenge. What is one way in your life that you could use these tools in order to change a habit, in order to make yourself a wee bit more healthy? I hope you'll take that challenge, and I thank you for your attention.